What is up, guys? Welcome to Machine Guru. My name is Anthony and I will be your host for the series. The series will contain information about the machine hardware, the machine software, and basically everything in between. So if you've been considering buying a machine or you don't know what drum machine to buy, this will kind of give you an overview of a lot of things and then you can make your decision from there. I'll talk about workflow and how it's improved my production immensely. And seeing as this is the first video, I will start it off by kind of overviewing what the interface looks like and how to kind of use everything. Alright guys, let's start breaking down the interface a little bit, because as basic as it seems compared to other DAWs, there are actually a few functions that are hidden to make it seem basic, but it does its work. So I think the most important function that we can ever have in Maschine would be this Maschine logo right here. Now, you don't think it has much meaning, but trust me, after long sessions of using Maschine, you start forgetting that you're using Maschine. So it's good once in a while to look up and reassure yourself that you're still using Maschine. Next, we have this search button right here. It looks like a search button, but when you click it, woo, look at what just came up. Hell yeah. So this is actually known as the browser in Maschine. So this contains a ton of files, most of which come from Maschine itself. There are a lot of stock files that come with Maschine, and a lot of them are good. Trust me, I've used so many of them and they're quality products. So like they come in kits, most of them. So let's say an 808 kick, let's load that up. It actually loads up all 16 pads here. So it's a lot of work that Maschine has put into it, and they work really well. Next, we have our beats per minute, which for example purposes has been set at 133, but with this tempo knob here on the camera, you can just go and flip that back and forth to whatever you need for your project. We have the swing, which offsets certain instruments depending however much you want to offset it, and then we have the time signature that you're making the instrumental in. Next, we have the transport controls, all pretty basic stuff. Start from the beginning, play and record, pretty self-explanatory. On this side, however, we have two buttons that are extremely important in the right scenarios. This button, although you can't really tell from the actual button itself what it would do, actually calibrates. So let's say that the hardware and the actual software aren't on the same page and they're on completely different chapters of the book. You could click this and the pads that are shown in the software would sync up with everything shown in the hardware. So if something were to happen to your project file, you can easily calibrate it back up. The next button is actually could be a lifesaver for a lot of people, because it's kind of an emergency mute button. So let's say out of the blue you start smelling burnt plastic coming from your sound card. You might want to click this button to save yourself from going through a fire. So just an example I'm going to show you. This is just some drums that I put together in literally like 3 seconds. So I'll play the drums and then click the button and show you exactly what it does. So it completely stops it. It stops it from playing, it mutes it, so no external hardware other than the Maschine can go through something that might be catastrophic. Next, we have this little black thing right here, this little black bar, which I can't really explain much, because unless you're physically seeing the white little lines going up, it would make more sense, but it's actually a CPU meter. So if you have a lot of VST plugins open, you will start to see this go up because you're processor will be going through a lot more to handle. This is the master volume, which can be either dragged from here with your mouse, or on the hardware, it is the first knob to the left. So right here, you could turn that and turn it back to whatever you would need so it doesn't distort. This is the Native Instruments logo, which is the company that made Maschine. I will not click it because even if it does give you information, it kind of gives you too much information because it will give out my serial number, so I will not click it, but take my word for it. Next, I'm going to try and break down the scenes here and the groups and patterns as briefly as I can, because I do want to have a separate video for each one, because it kind of is the meat and potatoes of Maschine, so they both do deserve their own video. But I'll just kind of break down what they really are. So the scenes are something that I was actually pretty confused at when I first opened Maschine, but now that I've gotten experience with it, I know exactly what it is. So I'll kind of break it down to you. This intro right here, this example of an intro, is telling us to play pattern 1. This is pattern 1. This block represents a pattern. Pattern 1 in group B, which is the drums, which if you click pattern 1 will open up the sounds that are included in pattern 1. Now, patterns can range from 1 to 16 in each group, but they can only work if they have the same sounds in them. So group 1 has these sounds, group 2 will have these sounds, group 3, group 4, and group 5, all of them up until group 16 will all use the same sounds. So unless you're using another sound, if you're using another sound, you'd have to put it on another group, because you can't put it on this group. Now, in the breakdown, it says that we're using pattern 2. This is because pattern 2 has a variation in production. Now, pattern 1 has a stomp here, stomp 3, and these stomps, stomp 1. Pattern 2, because it's the breakdown, doesn't have stomps. So it has every other sound playing, but not the stomps. So I think that kind of visually explains it to you, but if you're someone who has to hear it to explain it, I'll actually play what the difference between the intro and the breakdown is in both patterns. So here it is. So that's kind of a representation of what I mean. It kind of gets confusing if I were to include 16 patterns in each group. This is just one group we're talking about. If I was to include 16 different patterns up until group H, it would be extremely confusing. But I kind of hope that clears a little bit of it up. And if it doesn't, just write it down in the comments. I'll actually make a video for each one to explain it in depth. So if this didn't really explain it for you, just wait for those videos, I guess. The last thing I'm going to cover in the interface is this actual hub here. I'll call it a hub. I don't know what the actual name is, but the hub here, where you can edit things for the master, group, and sound, which, briefly explained, master is the whole project, every single sound. Group are all the sounds in the current group, all 16 sounds or however many you have, and sound would be a specific sound. Now in these parameters you can add effects. So let's say you wanted to add onto stomp 1, you wanted to add reverb. You would go and you would click reverb. Now this is the stock reverb. I use my own reverb, but for example purposes you would add reverb and then you could change it up. So it added reverb. You could make the size bigger, you can make the EQ smaller, and you can just change things and make the reverb last longer. So there's the VSTs. You can just add VSTs in your own VST plugins. I have a lot, but you can add your own in. And you can do that same process on group and master, and they would have a different output. So on group, if I were to add the same reverb and take the one off of sound because it's going to overlap, if I were to put the reverb here and just change the settings, it would add it to every instrument in my drum group. So it's pretty self-explanatory. Master, I would not add any effects into master because I would not want all of my instruments having reverb on them, because that would take up a lot of space in the speakers. But anyways, guys, that's it for the interface. I kind of dumbed it down a lot. Like it was really basic. I just made the whole interface in basically 10 minutes, which I didn't even think I could do. But I hope to make one video for each of these aspects so you guys can get an actual representation of what I meant when I was saying a lot of the things. Like I could actually make it a lot more detailed. But for a first YouTube video, I think I did pretty well. And if you don't think I did pretty well, then tell me your opinion on why you don't think I did pretty well, because your opinion might make my future videos pretty well. And then if you keep giving me opinions, maybe the pretty well can become better, and I can become better than pretty well. But anyways, guys, thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next episode. This is Anthony signing out.